Now, we're in the beautiful Greenwich Park, and so I really want to show you this place because it's quite a special place to me. So we're going to hop into an edit in 3, 2, 1. Just a very quick update on the squirrel situation. A very kind lady came and gave me a few nuts to feed these squirrels as I was taking a few photos of them. And so next minute I'm holding out my hand and this one first attempt comes and bites my finger. So a few weeks ago I returned from my travels to Paris and Amsterdam, and I wanted to reflect for you guys and share with you some insights I had from my solo travels. And the first thing was that being a solo traveler, you really get the freedom to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, and there's lots of different opportunities. So for instance, I was on a river cruise in Paris and I'm hopping onto the cruise and there's a spare seat in the front row. And so because so many people travel together in pairs, in groups, you don't often always get the best seats, but as a solo traveler, you can just fill up these empty spaces. It also led me to meet some really interesting people. And so one really awesome experience I had in Amsterdam was I went into this Italian pizza restaurant, and so they've got the wood fire oven going. It's quite packed, and so eventually the waiter comes over to me and asks if it'd be alright if I moved to a slightly smaller table. So he pulls out this small marble circular table, sits me in a corner, and I think they felt a bit bad because they were putting me on kind of this to the side table, but it was actually an amazing experience. And so I was able to just people watch and enjoy the atmosphere, have a delicious pizza and the tiramisu, and they even brought me some limoncello after. And it was partly the experience of just the waiters themselves. They were very charismatic, and I ended up going back to this restaurant a couple of times and having a really good conversation with that same waiter who had visited Australia and been around the world in different places. And so when you're on your own, you're more likely to open up and really share these experiences with strangers, to be honest. Travel also gave me some great exposure to different cultures. And so in Paris, just the differences in times they eat, when they're eating. They're all going to the boulangerie, which is the bakeries in France, and they're kind of the social aspect. They have a drink and a smoke together, which is quite different to how it is in both England and Australia. Even the way they communicate with each other, it was very non-verbal as well as verbal, so different hand actions, lots of facial expressions that is less common again in the cultures that I've been to previously. And sometimes it's not until you go to a new culture that you really start to pick up these things and challenge and question what you've been doing for the rest of your life. And on top of, I guess, those socio-cultural things, just experiencing the different architecture and the history of a place like France, where there's very historical buildings. You've got the Gothic architecture, which is unlike anything I've seen in Australia, obviously being a relatively new country with not many new buildings. And another thing, particularly with solo travel, is the time you have to reflect and ponder on your experiences. So at the end of each day, or after I'd seen something, I had time to just jot down a few notes to distill some thoughts I'd had on what I'd just seen, and it really just provided quite a broad perspective that I hope I can convey somewhat through this video itself. And that leads me on to an idea around confidence. And so that was the first time I traveled solo apart from moving to England itself. and it was quite daunting having to find all the accommodation, the flights, and plan all the activities. But once you do new things, even within the country, I was taking the train for the first time, and I was on the right station but the wrong direction, so being in French, it wasn't as easy to decipher, and so I was standing there for a while waiting for my train to come, which it never did because I was on the wrong side. And so it took me probably twice the time it should have taken to get to my destination that I was staying. But by the next day, I was already becoming more comfortable, more confident in the transport system itself, in the way the different lines ran, the metros, the trains, and the different systems. And so I think that really applies to life in general. And when you're doing something new in terms of an experience, maybe it's a new skill, you're a novice, you don't have those experiences, and so you have to pursue through that barrier, through that initial learning period, to come out the other side and then have the confidence to tackle it, and it will be such a quicker process and you'll be far more confident in doing that. One of the things I started to question when I was traveling was the amount of photos that people were snapping. I had people at monuments jumping in front of you just to get some angle of a photo, and then they would take a lot of photos and then just move on without even really observing the monument itself. And so while I did snap a few photos, I was really trying to enjoy the moment and be present there and enjoy the experience while I was there, because at the end of the day, you can post something on social media and try and, I guess, convey your highlights reel, but you're doing that experience to enjoy for yourselves. So it's just a reminder to really enjoy the experiences you have, to not get so caught up, particularly when traveling. Take less photos and enjoy being in the moment. And there definitely are a couple of, I guess, downsides to solo traveling, and so it is more lonely. There are periods when you perhaps wish you could share that memory with someone else. The little laughs you have with one another, the lifting each other up when there's a failure or you forget something and things go wrong. And so it takes a little while to get used to solo traveling, to eating on your own at a restaurant. But the slow pace is something you can get used to, but it's just something to be aware of, that it is a different experience. Okay, and so finally, just to sum up the two cities for you, if you are interested in that, Paris was an amazing city, full of food, the boulangeries, the pastries there, and so many monuments and museums to see. And I think it would be worth seeing for at least kind of 4 days, because there is just such a variety of things to see, and it is really an amazing city. Now, Amsterdam, I would recommend not going in peak winter. It is quite cold, it's quite rainy, very windy, and it's very much about the canals, the architecture, and the beautiful and extravagant facades of the different houses. And so traveling when it's a bit more sunny, a bit more pleasant being outside, is probably worth it, and it is quite a social scene as well. I didn't think you needed as many days there as Paris. Some people really love Amsterdam, and it might be that it is better if you're with people and a bit more social, but I think I probably could have done it in a couple of days, whereas I really enjoyed the full 4 to 5 days in Paris and experiencing the city there.